Hello, Gaz Williams here for Sonic Lab, and this is the second of our Trace Elliot reviews, following on from the first review, which was of the little elf amplifier. The second thing is this floor unit here, which is called the Transit B. It's a preamp, and it's got compressors, EQ, and an overdrive, and some other little tricks up its sleeve, and we'll have a look at that in a moment. But we can imagine that these things, they came out at the same time, and you can almost think of it as two separate things. Obviously, you can use both of them independently, but when you bring them together, it sort of gives you many of the features that aren't in this little amp. It puts them on the floor right where you need them. So, yeah, let's get straight into it. Let's have a look at what we got going on here. So, first thing we can see is that the mute is engaged. If I unmute it, we can see that. But with it muted, handy, there's a tuner. And we can see I'm pretty much in tune. Oh, if it's flat, you get this, like if I do detune down, green, and then it becomes a solid red when the note is in tune. More or less there. There we go. There we go. Okay, so it's, let's put it into E for a moment. I was going to tune into a D sharp there. There we go. Okay, perfect. Right, great. So, mute and tuner, very useful. First thing we can do, let's have a listen. So this is just the sound of it. Okay, so it's nice, clean. The EQ on the amp is flat. And we're going in at an instrument level because handily at the back of the Transit B, there's two different types of jack output, one of which is instrument level and another which is line level. So that gives you the ability to either go in to the front of an amplifier at the right sort of, impedance and signal level, or if you wanted to take that and just go line in straight into a mixer. It's nice to see that you've got the options there. Of course, there's two DI outs as well. You've got a pre-DI and a post-DI. And what we've got here going on is we've got the post-DI. So basically the DI component here is after all of the gubbins. And we've also got a microphone on the cab here. We're using TC Electronic cabs here. These are RS 110s, 112s rather, 12-inch cab speakers with concentric tweeters. Tweeters are set to about noon. Okay, so we've got mute. The first switch on here on the right hand side, we've got a passive active toggle, but the first switch is this pre-shape switcher. The pre-shape is a kind of Trace Elliot standard in a way, and is the classic smiley curve. So if we engage the pre-shape without, so it's like a big old mid sweep scoop, which of course is beloved of the slap brigade. So you can hear that kind of really snappy. It sounds as well like there is quite a bit of extra gain going on when that's engaged. You occasionally get like a weird little high pitch thing going on. I'm not quite sure what that is. There. Anyway. But so yeah, useful, but with that caveat that high frequency sort of buzz could be a bit of a nuisance, especially if you've got a tweeter in your bass cab. Okay, next in line is the drive control. Drive control is just sort of simply two controls. Handily, you notice though the green LED lights light up to see if the section is engaged. The drive and the blend. So the blend is a blend between the clean sound and the distorted sound, and the drive is the distortion amount. So we've got that sort of roughly at 12, and set them both at about 12 for a moment to start with. So if we go 100% wet with the blend, so this is just the distorted. Big drop off of bottom end, hence the blend control. Allows you to get some of that crucial bottom end back in. And it's kind of okay. I always find the problem with blends, it sounds like there's two separate layers going on a little bit. Your clean sound and the distorted sound slightly sound separate. But in fairness to the Transit B, if we listen to the blend control, I'll crank the drive right up now. There's a lot of filtering, top end filtering going on, which is kind of cool. Otherwise you get that nasty, if you're using the tweeter, you get a nasty tweeter action. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty useful actually. So I should mention at this point that I've used the Transit B on a couple of gigs, and those gigs were quite different from each other. One was like a kind of prog rock gig, and the other one was with like a surf band. And in the case of the prog rock band, a band called Rocket Goldstar, we were using. I was using quite a lot of the different sections. I was kicking the drive in quite a lot, and there was a slight issue in that. The switches are quite close together, and I was actually catching the equalizer and turning the equalizer on quite often. But I am kind of clumsy, and I'm a bit of a kind of madman on stage, so there is that to consider too. But, however, it was pretty useful having all the controls there and being able to have a very minimal setup. Actually, I just only used this and a wah-wah, which was a very easy setup, and I thought it was pretty good. And the drive control, especially at gig volume, was useful. I mean, the riff, like a riff like this. Now, it's not ferocious fuzz, but it's just, it puts that kind of hair onto the notes. It just gives it a little bit more attitude. And I actually found that in the context of a gig volume actually pretty cool. So that was quite good, providing I didn't knock on the EQ. But speaking of the EQ, that's the next one in the line here. And what the EQ is just simply 5 bands, and all of them are bell EQ. So the bass and treble either end are not shelves like you might expect, but are 5 tuned bells. So let's have a listen to see what they sound like. So we'll engage that. Everything set to 12. The bass. The low mid. Yeah. So they sound fairly. So quite different from the preamp, the pre-shape rather. So pretty cool, pretty cool. There's not quite as much range as I would like. I would like this, this bassy thing, just to be able to like pull these back a bit, just to get that nice deep dubby tone. But I think they're kind of sensible where they've set those frequencies. So cool. And usefully, there is a little pre-post compressor toggle, and we'll look at this in a moment, because that does have some impact, albeit quite subtle, depending on how you've got it set up. So next in line, compressor. And as I mentioned earlier, low band and high band. Basically, the amount of compression each band has. I'm not sure where the frequency split is, but it's quite handy. So if I was, say, getting into my slap action, and let's do it without the compressor, this twang, let's chuck the compressor in. So, you know, I can, if I dial back the bass, for instance, and like increase the treble, then the bass notes have a bit more kind of bloom, a little less kind of effect of the compressor, but the top end so nice to be two bands. Let's take the high band down, low band up. So being able to kind of dial it in there does mean that the flavour of the compressor can kind of suit what you want. Now, I'd imagine a lot of bass players who'll be interested in this are going to be of the slapping variety, and therefore that's where the kind of post comp switch comes in quite useful. So let's, for instance, now I'm going to turn up this high band right up so we get lots of compression in the top amp. Now, without, and then with. So you can hear like a definite dulling of the sound. So we can if we put the EQ then after the compressor, engage it, and then crank up the top end a little bit here. So you can get that top end. But what we notice though, and this is quite useful, that if we overload the EQ circuit like I am now, we can see it's lighting up red to say, back it off a bit, buddy, you're going too hard. So that's cool. You can kind of essentially use the two in tandem to make the compressor really tailored to your particular sound. And I like that. I think that's a nice feature. And finally, in this little recessed switch here, we've got bass enhancement. Now what this is, if I turn this on, then it's like a sub-harmonic generator. It's definitely like you can... Let's take it out. You probably need to hear this with headphones on, or certainly with a subwoofer. And here's a bit of a puzzling thing with it. It's actually quite nice. However, I'd much rather see that on a foot switch, really, or maybe have it with a separate foot switchable input on there, because I can imagine myself wanting to use that on some stuff, but not all. So, yeah, a little bit curious as to why that is only available as a press switch, but not a biggie. I think it's a brilliant tool for shaping the slap sound, because slapping is a kind of, to get a nice slap sound live, as you know, most bass players know, is actually quite hard. But with something like this, you can get really great slap tones straight out of the box with very little tweaking, and I think that's pretty cool. And one more thing I should mention is that the power supply that came with it, when I plugged it into the little Elf, it was making a bit of a buzz, so I swapped it out for another one, and that seemed to reduce it. Again, I don't know if that's just the model that I'm using, but maybe be aware of that if you do get a buzz, then maybe try a different power supply. It is just a standard 9 volt input though, so I'm sure you'll have plenty of them knocking around. So it's a very nicely built thing. It's made of metal. It's kind of sturdy. The foot switches feel good. I like the visual indications. I like the different colours. When you switch it all on, it's very colourful looking, which shows which controls are currently available. Is useful, and yeah, I think it's pretty decent. Would I go for it? I'm not so sure. I'm a little bit more kind of grit and gravel myself, but yeah, it's definitely a useful tool. I say it comes with a gig bag, and it's around about £360 street price. I think you can. So for that price, it's certainly not cheap, but it is like a bunch of very good pedals all in one convenient package. It does have that Trace Elliot sound. So anyway, I'm Gaz Williams. This has been Sonic Lab. Hope you've enjoyed this. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already to Sonicstate, and I'll see you soon. Hey, let's get these things on.